So just checking that everyone can hear me okay. Um, Let me know in the chat box if you can't, but should be good to go. There we go. So today we're going to talk about what's underlying behaviour, and like I was just saying, I've had nearly 120 people sign up. That's within like a 24-hour period. So I know that this is something that so many parents are calling out for, and we're all struggling. I think all humans struggling at the moment. There's just so much pressure, and we're fatigued of all of the pressure. And I just think our kids are really copying it as well. So that's there's there's a lot of different things around behaviour, and I'm talking from toddlers all the way through to teens, and it's sorry. Absolutely, I'll talk up. There we go. My headphones weren't working, of course. Okay, there we go. I'll keep talking. Yeah, so we've just gone through this massive. I mean, before COVID, we were already struggling, and our nervous systems were really fraught. We were running on survival. Things were challenging in life as it was. It felt like life was just getting busier and busier and busier and busier. And I was seeing so many kids in clinic who had school refusal, who had meltdowns, who had ODD, all of the acronyms you can think of. But really, it was just it was families as well that were really really struggling. And of course, being holistic, what I do, if I will introduce myself in a minute for those who don't know me as well, but most of you do know me. But um, we've got this holistic view. If we put that on things, it's this sense that life is hard, and we would just want life to stop being hard. And I think, that's really, if I'm gonna sum this webinar up in a couple of minutes, that's really what our kids are saying. Our kids are saying, this is hard and I don't know what to do. Which, when you look at it from an adult perspective, we're finding it really hard too. And we don't know how to deal with everything. So when I see behaviour in kids in clinic, and for those who don't know me, I'm Emma. I'm a kinesiologist. I've been working with families for 15 years. And what I do is I get down to the bottom of things. So rather than diagnosing and coping strategies, I figure out what the human being needs and what the body needs and what the mind needs in order to actually change things. I'm just going to get a little bit closer for the volume. So really, when I look at behaviour, I'm going, okay, is it the emotions underneath everything? Is it the environment? Is it something within the biological sense that is unbalanced, therefore making neurotransmitters imbalanced, all that kind of stuff? Is there sensory processing issues? Is there birth trauma? Is there other trauma? So I kind of look at everything and I say, okay, what is going on? And I'm open to everything. So in all these years' experience, there's kind of these really key things that we can look at. And I just wanted to pass that on. And because we're all struggling, I thought, rather than have everybody into clinic, because I know that's actually hard for a lot of people at the moment, I'd run this webinar. And it's something I've always really wanted to do as well. So what better time than now? But really, I think humans in general, including kids, are breaking down. And our environments at home are struggling, and I think therefore our kids are struggling a lot of the time. Our own internal reactions are really strange and really reactive. There's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of shifts and changes, and to go from the last couple of years for a child's nervous system, which was really quite settled, and then re-entering the world, I think it's been really jarring. And I think a lot of people starting to say, I can't do this. I really can't do this. So I'll just ask everyone again to put themselves on mute if you can. But when I look at behaviour, there we go. Thank you. When I'm looking at behaviour, I am usually looking at it not how do we discipline this child. We're not asking that. We're not saying how better do we control this child, because children really want to please us and they want to do well, and it's biologically wired, because if we are accepted, if we are in the, that right warm embrace of our parents and the world around us, then we're safe. And if we're on the outside of that, then our nervous systems actually really struggle. And that's when we go into fight and flight and all that kind of stuff, which I'm going to talk about because it's a huge part of things as well. So what we're talking about in behaviour is not something that's being naughty. Even in ODD, oppositional defiance disorder and all that kind of stuff, look, to be honest, we go through waves of what's being diagnosed, depending on where the research funding is at that time. It's just one of those weird things that happens in the health field. So you'll get these waves of things that are being diagnosed all the time, and ADHD and ODD are getting a little bit of a re-emergence. And I think, that's good. We're getting more studies done on it, but before we jump in and diagnose all our kids, we need to really understand what it is they're presenting with and why they're presenting with those things. So if we look at a child and we see that they want our connection, they want our safety. Now, our next question is, can they trust us for that safety and connection? And this is actually really difficult because there's really two sides of it, because when a child's in fight or flight, often the parents become in fight or flight. And then once the parents are in fight or flight, the child, may or may not suppress themselves. And so either the cycle will continue or it will be shut down based off that child's reaction. So in the kids who have behavior issues, they're the ones that say, I'm not taking your shit. I'm not going to deal with this. You have issues. I need connection and you're not being there. Now, again, this is really, really broad spectrum, and it's a really strong way for me to say, I think we're blaming the kids a lot for their behavior when actually it's their environments that is the cause of the behavior. And I'm coming at this from a perspective of being a mum myself, and knowing how much my nervous system regulation and my reaction to things has to do with how my kids are behaving. And I went through this really hard time with my kids and I was really struggling with them. And I realized it was because I was holding so much anger and tension all the time. So they didn't energetically, emotionally feel safe. And when it comes to the nervous system is always looking out for, am I safe? 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 And kids have to rely on the adults around them to keep them safe. They can't necessarily keep themselves safe. So if they can't rely on the adults around them to feel safe, then they're going to go into fight or flight. They're not going to know what to do. They're going to want to get control. They're going to want to manipulate. They're going to want to shut down and out, which is the whole thing with addiction and games and things like that. And they just don't, they hold the tension just as much as we do. And so when we're expecting our kids to behave, we really have to ask ourselves, well, how are we behaving? How are we behaving at home? How are we relating to people? What are we doing? Are we reacting or are we engaging and connecting and explaining things? So we have to look at it from human to human, not necessarily from that authoritarian trigger that it used to be, um, because kids no longer can trust the outer world because the outer world and our environment changes so much in these generations. There's so much more information coming in that the nervous systems are naturally overwhelmed, and really quickly overwhelmed. So if you think of, the way I'll describe it is that if you think of our nervous systems, so close your eyes, take a deep breath. I love this movement, and I tell you all the time to do that. But close your eyes, take a deep breath, and take an extra two or three because, the way I've come in is really quite strong. But take an extra two or three deep breaths and just relax your body. And now think about the sounds, the movements, the predictability or unpredictability of life. And notice how your body changes with things. So when you add more information in, when you add more sensory information in, when you add more change in, your body will naturally tense up. And so that happens because it needs time to process things. And if you're not getting that time to process, then it's like it becomes a traffic jam and you become tense. And so what happens then is that if that tension holds, if you can't find safety, if you can't find a sense of control or a sense of understanding of what's going on, the limbic system becomes involved. And the limbic system is the back part of our brain. And it says, okay, I need to rise cortisol levels. I need to rise stress hormones in order to cope and to deal with this amount of pressure. Now, this is also where we end up looking at our parents and the way that they've responded to stress. So that becomes inbuilt in us, and we say, okay, we deal with stress by communicating, talking, expressing our emotions, or we deal with stress with more stress, or avoiding or going into fight or flight. And we all have these human reactions. There's no judgment with anything ever that I say. It's just pure human behavior. And so when we've got all of that sensory information in with not feeling safe, we need to then look to our parents, see if they're going to keep us safe. But if they're in fight or flight as well, then that breath within us, that tension within us is going to stay. And that's that moment there, that tension moment where we don't get that response that we need to make ourselves feel safe, that's the moment behavior comes in. So behavior will look like, it can look like control, it can look like manipulation, it can look like anger, it can look like wanting something. Wanting something is a big sign of the fight or flight reaction happening. I just want to shut down, I want to shut out. I can't deal with this. Yeah, we do the same as adults, right? I just want to lock myself away and go away. I want something. I need it now. I want to do this. I want to do that. I don't want you to go away. I can't let you go away. Please stay with me. I'm scared. I'm angry. I'm fearful. I'm sad. I don't know what to do with all of these feelings. And when you don't know what to do with all of the feelings, your behavior gets even worse. Now, if your behavior is then met with understanding and an adult response, which is, again, I'm trying not to be harsh here, but I want to be really straight with you guys, right? So it's said with complete love and compassion and no judgment, but when it's met with an adult response and the adult says, yeah, okay, I gotcha. No worries. You can react how you want. I get that you're scared and I can see what's underneath this. Then that little human inside goes, okay, I know that I'm safe. I know that they've got it. I can trust them. And their behavior will calm down. I promise you, it will calm down no matter what they've got going on underlying. If they can look at you and say, I'm scared, I'm worried, but they're doing it in behavior, and the adult in the room is going, cool, no worries, I got this, no worries, then that behavior will settle. If the adult in the room reacts to that, so we've got so many different reactions that can happen in that moment. It can become anger, control, you're disrespecting me, which is like a whole other thing I will go into a bit later. But I will say that an adult who says that their child is disrespecting them needs, how do I say this delicately? I'm not going to say this delicately, I don't think. They are emotionally immature, right? Because they're not holding that space of, this is a child expressing themselves. Why do they need to be respected by a child? It never sat right with me, that one. I don't know why an adult needs respect from a child. Other adults, yes, get it. Children, not sure why we need that one, unless emotionally you need that. So I'll just like, again, gently with love, it's all just human behavior, no judgment, but, um, you know, is it, are we going into a child who's expressing to us, I don't feel safe, I feel worried, I can't comprehend what's going on right now, I don't know what to do, and I don't know what to say. So that's what behavior is being met with tension, or there's also the other flip side of that, which is completely buying into that emotion and going, oh my gosh, yes, you're right. Oh my gosh, there's all these big emotions. What are we going to do? What do you need? Da, 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 da. And now all of a sudden, the child is in control of the emotional regulation. So what happens then is that you've got this child who is fearful and scared and not knowing what to do, and they're looking from safety from their parents, from the adult who has more experience in life, and they're saying to the parent, am I okay? Are we okay? And the parent is, if they're emotionally buying into it, they're going, oh no, I don't think we're okay. Or, you really should feel this really, really deeply. And for kids who feel really, really deeply, that's like a big roller coaster to go on all of the time. And so, yes, sometimes that's needed for a big release, and I'll get to that a little bit later on. But sometimes they just need a sense of, it's cool, no worries. You're scared and overwhelmed because you haven't seen this as many times as I have, and it's okay. I got this. You'll be fine, right? You'll be fine. And we take that sometimes as we're just brushing the feelings away, but we really need to kind of know where that fine line is of a full meltdown is needed. And again, I'll get to that a little bit later on. Is it a full meltdown that's needed, or are they just looking for safety, uncertainty, and routine in that moment? Because if we jump in very, very emotionally to that moment, then all of a sudden the child has to shift their emotions for the adult to shift theirs, if that makes sense. So if I'm an adult going in and I'm saying, oh yes, this is super scary and it's super sad, what do you need, what do you need, what do you need? And the child is going, okay, wow, like I was looking for safety from you, but now I'm responsible for lifting you up as well. And that's really overwhelming to a little child. So they don't know what to do in that moment because the adult in the room doesn't know what to do. So how are they meant to know what to do? And they go, okay, I just don't know. And they will become more wired, more unsettled, more emotional. And there'll be a pattern that repeats itself because every time they feel a big emotion, they're not just like going through the motions. They've got to let mum or dad, feel those emotions as well until the whole family's come back. But the child is the one that's in control of the emotional center in that family. So you've kind of got those two options that tend to happen and all the grey and rainbows in between. But basically, if you look at it really, really simply, the behavior is saying, I'm scared, I'm worried, I'm overwhelmed, there's too much information coming into my mind. I don't know how to sort through it. I don't know how to process this. I will flight. So what the nervous system will do, it will flight first. And the flight reaction will just try and get away, it'll try and shut off, or it'll literally run. Or in like we see in most kids, they'll want something. They'll decide that they want something, and that's, from toddlers, that'll be, I want this, no, that's not it. I want that, no, that's not it. I want this on, no, I don't know what, I don't want that on, all that kind of stuff. To kids who just want a game all the time, they want the iPad, they want their friends over, they want this, they want that, they've come up with a new thing that they want. They don't want to leave here, they want to go there. And then teenagers who will just flight, they'll just leave the room, right? So you've kind of got all different reactions there. So the flight reaction, and if you think about it as just human beings, we've all got those reactions within us. And, we all want to do them when things get hard. So a flight reaction will emotionally say, I'm scared, I'm overwhelmed, I need time and I need space to process this. So that's what we need to give. We need to give processing time in those moments. So we need to start looking at behavior as signs of what that child actually needs at that moment. So the flight reaction needs processing time. I want this, I want that, I can't deal with this, I want to run away. That needs processing time. And so if you're talking too much in that moment or trying to over explain things or give too many solutions, it's more information coming in and you're going to end up in fight mode really, really quickly. But if you can see that they just need processing time, I'm not saying give them the iPad or anything, because again, that's just more processing in and more addiction. But what you can do in those moments is say, go and draw, go and play Lego, sit here with me, just have a cuddle, we'll sit in silence, come and join me on the kitchen bench and just be with me while I cook dinner or whatever else. So they just need time. And this is often why when teenagers, will sit in the car, they will start to open up because there's that processing time and there's not more information coming in. They just are there, and they're there, and it allows the brain to, like, if you think of that traffic jam, it starts to connect and it starts to process and it starts to make sense of things and it starts to order things, and then they can formulate words from that. So when the brain's overwhelmed, it can't actually come up with words. And so, words become, if we're wanting words in those moments from people, they're not going to have them there because they're overwhelmed and they're struggling. So what we need to do is just allow that processing time before we get an explanation, before we get understanding. And they might go through a cycle of really wanting something. And then if we allow that space, that time, that breath, and now it's really important here as the adult that's holding the space in that moment to take those really deep breaths. Because what could be happening is that there's a lot going on in that moment and we're busy running around and there's a lot of change, there's a lot happening, things are maybe happening, maybe not happening. things that were meant to happen aren't going to happen, all that kind of stuff. And so the child again is looking out at their environment going, how safe am I right now? And if the parent doesn't look like they're safe, then that's going to trigger their nervous system to go, whew, okay, like we need to amp up the cortisol because we're not safe. We're not safe, we're not safe, we're not safe. And then they'll come to you and they'll say, I want this, I want this, I want this. So that's them going into flight reaction. They're saying there's too much information. There's a whole lot of adult stuff going on here. I don't understand it. There's so much change. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just try and exit and process this stuff. Um, and so if we don't allow that processing time, if we don't regulate our own nervous system in that time, so we jump in with that, I told you no, rah, 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 this isn't happening. Because what's happened in our nervous systems at that point is that we were already stressed and we're getting more information in. And they're trying to change direction on us. So what happens to our nervous system is we go into fight mode, which is the next stage from flight. So when we can no longer flight and run away, so if you can imagine it from that biological level of wanting to keep safe from a predator or something that's going to eat us, something that's not safe, we run away first until we get space to figure out, is this situation safe? Do I know it? Do I know what to do? Do I know what's going to happen? And what's going to happen is going to be safe and hugs and safety at the end. Or am I entering into an even more dangerous situation? Have I been here before? Has this been a fight for me before? Have we conflicted before? So they're going in with that flight response and that expectation that I don't find safety at the end of this. And we're doing the same. We're saying, fire out, I can't comprehend anymore. My brain is overwhelmed. There's too much noise. There's too much chaos. And now I'm going to go into flight mode. And so again, the child goes, well, the adult in the room doesn't have my safety. I can't rely on them to have my safety. So I'm going to have to increase my cortisol levels and then I'm going to have to fight. And then that fight turns into stubbornness, turns into physical aggression, it turns into anger and frustration and that tension and that manipulation. Kids who don't necessarily express their anger will be manipulative instead. That's their way of fighting. And they just, that anger and that tension comes out. And so now you've got two overwhelmed nervous systems fighting against each other for power rather than safety. And, because again, humans tend to mistake power for safety. So I've got control. And the child says, no, you don't. And you're like, not really, but I need control. And then the child says, but I don't trust you. So I'm going to fight you for this position of power. Right? And so then you're back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And again, if you're adding more fight, more stimulation into that nervous system, then things are going to collapse. Now, the other way that happens is that if you're someone who avoids conflict, then often that parent will guilt trip unintentionally, but there'll be a little bit of manipulation, a little bit of anger. You've hurt my feelings. That's not okay. What are you doing? All that kind of stuff. So now, all of a sudden, the child has said, I'm not safe. I don't have this under control. You don't have this under control. But now I feel bad for making this happen. What everybody's unsafety must be my fault. And, again, it's said with complete love and respect and just human behavior again. If this is triggering, if this is hard to hear, I get it. I'm trying to do this as gently as possible, but I think we need some honesty in this space because all the techniques aren't necessarily working. And we just need to be honest about what's going on. And the way that we handle stress really has an impact. And how we emotionally respond to stress really has an impact on our kids' behavior. So depending on where you're coming from there, do you fight the fight, or do you emotionally melt down in that fight? A little bit like the respect, like why are we feeling hurt by a child? Um, what really is going for us emotionally to be hurt by a child? Um, I know that teenagers can really, they'll find those things and they'll dig. Um, but again, if you haven't done that emotional work, if you're still emotionally triggered by those things, then, maybe just try and work through that too, because now you've got, if you're working at it from that teen perspective, you've got that fight, which meets the guilt and I can't cope with this and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, the teenager who isn't feeling prepared for the world yet is now responsible for everyone's emotional health. So that just puts more pressure on an already overwhelmed system. So again, if you've gone from flight mode but safety isn't found, then we're going to go fight mode. And fight mode is saying, angry, I'm mad, I'm warning you. It's like our warning system. I'm warning you, I'm not coping and I don't know what to do. But I can't flee anymore, so I'm going to challenge you instead. So that's the wild animal in us, right? And then really what that fight mode wants is, I want to be heard. I want you to hear that I don't feel safe, that I don't feel, I feel scared. I don't feel safe. Um, I don't know what to do, or I feel all of these feelings and I just don't know how to communicate them. And that's the fight mode. So again, whatever age we're looking at here, it's the same. We're all human, and this is just what humans do. Um, so, again, if we go into fight mode over and over and over again, but that conflict is never ever resolved, then eventually we give up, we collapse, we can't cope anymore. And usually you'll see that more in teenagers, where they literally can't cope with anything anymore. Or you're having those real times and you're just like, my child is so emotional all the time anymore. The other sign that it will come out in is that's when the not good enough stuff will come in. And they'll say, they feel bad for feeling this way. They feel bad for all the conflict that apparently they're causing in the family. And so they're not good enough and they can't, I can't control myself. So therefore, and you're saying it's my fault and I am a bad person all the time. Or that fight mode is not, so what happens as well is if that fight mode is never really shown between the parents, so if the parents both suppress all of their feelings and they never really talk about things and they never bring up stuff into that conflict zone, then the child never learns how to fight. And then they don't know what to do with all of that anger because they've never been shown what anger does. And so they get really tense and they don't know what to do, and the brain's on edge. And when the brain is on its biggest edge, so the brain kind of says, emotionally, I'm got so much to express, but I don't know how to express it. That's actually when I'm not good enough will come in. So let me know if I'm jumping too much here, or if hopefully it's got a little bit of a flow to it. I'm trying to make that flow through the nervous system. But I've got so much information to share. I think sometimes I jump a little bit. So make sure you ask me questions in that chat box down below. Or if you're listening to the replay, just email me. But if you've got that sense of, okay, I've tried to express to you that I'm not safe. Um, and I haven't had processing time. Now you're challenging me, but no one's ever shown me what to do with these emotions. Or I know that these emotions are going to cause so much conflict in the family. So again, there's never really like a dun dun. It's like an either or. um, and so either there's so much conflict in the family and I don't want to contribute to it, or these emotions are never expressed. Um, that's when the brain will go, you know what, like you're the problem and you need to go away. Um, you need to shut down, and it's like a meltdown point. And the meltdown point is I'm not good enough, and that's the one where it says, with being really cautious here, a lot of the words that will come out will tend to be around wanting to die or kill or something like that. It's because the nervous system has reached a point where there's so much fight within, there's so much tension, and there's no way out. And so the end feels like relief. And they want it to end. They just want this feeling to end. And that's when all those words will come out. And so what we need to do in those moments is to let the meltdown happen, because again, if you think of all of that information in the brain that's come in at that point, the crying, releasing, that moment of crying actually like washes away all of the tension in the brain. And so we get to that point of crying, then that's a really, really good thing. And you want to let that go for as long as you can, because that's going to reset the brain. And so we want our kids to cry a lot, because we reset the brain. But it's got to be a proper cry and a proper sob, not the whiny, the whining crying is a little bit flight, a little bit flight, a little bit fight, kind of teetering on that edge. But the proper surrender point, that's the that kind of crying. Proper tears, proper like proper meltdown, and we want to let it get to the end of that meltdown. Otherwise, you've kind of half emptied that bucket, and you just want to keep going. You just want to let it cry and cry and cry, and then you step in and you're like, you're safe. I'm here. I've got you. So now I've kind of shown you all the dysfunctional areas that'll happen in that fight or flight stage. If we come back and we say, okay, we look at behavior, it's challenging and it's making our jaw clench and our back turn up, and we don't know what to do in that moment, that's our child saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's happening. I can't comprehend what's going on. I can't comprehend what just happened all day, or there's something on my mind that I haven't comprehended. Again, remember those connections that come in, and if things make sense, then we feel safe. So I'll say that. If things make sense, then we feel safe. And if things don't make sense, then we don't feel safe. Really? Yeah, so if all those connections and sensory information and everything's coming in and it's making sense, it's ordered, it's controlled, we know what's happening, right? Then we're going to feel safe and calm and relaxed. We can see that the parents in the room, the adults in the room are feeling ordered and control and happy as well. There's eye contact being made. I'll come back to that. But again, eye contact is really, really important. I'm just checking the time. So if we have eye contact, then we feel safe. It says, I see you and I'm calm. Look at me. We're good. We're all good. So if you've got a child who doesn't like to talk much, then eye contact. If you're really, really busy at home, you've got a lot on your mind, then make sure you do a lot of eye contact. Because again, that's going to make your child's behavior, no matter what it is, no matter what age it is, saying, I don't feel safe. I don't know what's going on. I can't comprehend this. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to connect. I don't know what you're doing, why you're feeling tense, why are you feeling unsafe, right? If mum and dad aren't feeling safe, or my parents or the adults in the room aren't feeling safe, why should I feel safe? Again, the nervous system is always scanning um, to see what the adult reaction is, because the adults are the ones in charge of the safety. So, can we put our trust in that safety, right? If we can't, then we're going to come out with behavior. We're going to feel tense and scared and frustrated and not know what to do in this moment. We're not going to want to leave you. We're not going to want to connect with you. We're not going to want to do much at all other than find safety in whatever way we know how, or whatever way we've seen our parents do it as well. So, again, kind of a mimicking thing. Now, one thing to note there is that really small children will regulate themselves based off your breath. So they will notice and mimic the way that you breathe. So if you're stressed, then they're going to mimic that and they're going to feel that stress, but they don't know why they're feeling that way. They just know that you're feeling that way. So if they're confused by that, what they're going to do is they're going to come out with a behavior. And that behavior is going to challenge. Now, if you recognize that behavior and you say, this is challenging, this is their pattern, they're looking for safety, they're looking for control, you find yourself, okay, I'm tense again, I'm really stressed again. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to regulate my emotions. I'm going to have to take a few deep breaths. I'm going to have to step up into that adult space, which can be really hard. And it's part of that is accepting that really life's challenging. We have a lot more strength in us than we think we do. So taking that deep breath, and right now, everything is fine. Everything's okay. I actually do have control of this situation. And then at that point, we can approach that behavior like calm, rational adults. And we say, your behavior is not okay. Or, I can see that you're really frustrated. I can see that you're scared. What do you need? So depending on how well you've regulated, depends on how well you can step in with that boundary. So if you're really, really new at this, you're going to have to start coming in and rebuilding that trust with your child, because they don't trust you yet to hold that emotional space and that safety space. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to walk in with a cuddle first, and that real sense of what's going on, why are you like this? And then they're going to react because they're going to have emotions that they don't know how to express. And you're going to listen and you're going to hear them and you're going to stay calm, and you're going to realize that the first 5 things that they say, no matter what age, are not really true. Or if they're little, well, actually, no, not even if they're little, no matter what age, you're going to kind of go, okay, where could they be feeling overwhelmed at the moment? Is it the future? Is it what's coming up? Is it the past? Is it what's happened? And use your calmness to really try and feel into it, because you know your child, you know your family, you know what's going on. You might not know exactly, but you have the ability to ask questions. And so you don't come in and say, what's going on? What's happening? Tell me this, tell me that. You're not looking to solve the issue in that moment. The issue doesn't need to be solved in that moment. When the behavior comes up, what they need is that sense of things are fine, things are safe, it's okay, whatever it is, we'll work through it. It's all good. So those things like I hate you or all this stuff, that's a behavior, it's challenging. They're saying probably that they hating life, they're hating themselves, they don't feel safe in that moment, and they want you to just go away because they need processing time. So that could be their flight reaction too, and fight reaction. So depending on where you are in that cycle, how tense things have been leading up to that. So you've got that sense of really, no matter what stage you're at, the child is looking for safety, and the child is looking for, are we okay? Because right now things don't feel okay. Are we okay? And your role is to go in and say, yeah, things are good. Things are good, no worries. Like, we got this. And now, if you've come in and, reacted as humans do, then try and recognize it and find that calm, because their behavior will escalate, your behavior will escalate until you get to a point where actually the adult has to calm down, right? Take that breath, relax. It's not about disciplining in that moment. It's not about getting them to see anything or getting them to speak. It is just about, we're good. Trust me, I've got this under control. Or, yeah, it's a little bit, I don't know what's happening, but I've still got this under control. So that's your role as the adult, is to hold that space and to say, even if you don't know what's going on, you've got more control than they do. So you need to own that space. And you say, okay, no, you're not having that, but we're here. And come here, we need a cuddle instead. Now, you can actually shift that to a humorous perspective if they're not too wound up at that stage. They can come in with tickles, or you can come in with a come here, come in, give me a cuddle, or that real physical sense as well, rather than verbal. So that physical embrace, the physical proprioceptive squeeze, deep hug, wrestle, whatever it is, says, I'm okay. All right. So that actually releases a lot of tension and a lot of cortisol from the body when you get that physical touch. And so make sure that you do that in that moment as much as you can. Just create that physical touch and that connection, and you're safe. It's okay. Then once you've heard that big breath, once you feel that emotional energy drain away, then you can ask questions. What's going on? What's really going on? Da-da-da. And they might not be able to tell you right away because they were still trying to figure it out, but it opens up the conversation. Now, if you've gotten into fight mode, you need to probably let them just storm off, have some space, blow off some steam, come in, cuddle first. Cuddle first, cuddle first, cuddle first, talk about it. And then once the tears come, once everything calms down, then you can talk about what's going on. Again, we don't want to introduce solutions until after that big cry, that big soft, until safety is being found. We don't want to introduce solutions, because if you start trying to introduce solutions before then, it's just going to create more and more tension. Have you ever been in that really anxious space and someone's just like, don't worry about it. It's good. What about this? What about that? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? You're like, I don't even know what's going on inside myself yet, let alone trying to get control of myself. What are you talking about? And so, that sense of behavior, I want this, I want that, I'm going to fight you on this, I'm really angry, comes from that space of whatever's happening in my world, it's freaking me out, and I want you to hear it. So, hear it. And hear the behavior, hold that space for the behavior. Don't react to the behavior. Discipline afterwards, or put up boundaries to keep things safe, but don't do it in a reactive sense. If you're fighting from a really reactive space, then you're going to enter in that nervous system space really quickly. But if your discipline is coming from a place of calm and relaxed, and I've actually got control of this, and I'm not emotionally reacting to your behavior, but I'm just letting you know that this is happening now. And I've got control and I've got power in this sense. But if you come in from that sense of, I've got control and I've got power, then they're not going to feel safe, and they're not even going to hear what you're saying. So, you've got to really calm your own reactions down, and you cannot discipline from a space of reactivity. It breaks trust on all forms. So if you've broken trust with your child, then you have to rebuild it, because you promised that you'd keep them safe just by having them in your life. And if you haven't, then just like any other relationship, you need to prove that you're changing. And so do that, and do that slowly, do that gently. It's not that I said this or I did that. It's like, no, you have to do it consistently and allow the patterns to change. Um, so I think that kind of covers a lot of behavior. I'm just looking at the time and I've been talking for such a long time, but I think I might open it up to questions now if you want to ask me in the chat box. Any questions that you have specifically about kids and their behaviors, things that you really do struggle with. I will say, so sensory processing issues, again, that just means that their ability to comprehend what's going on in the world is really small. Like that bucket is really, really small compared to other people. So they can only take in a little bit of information at a time. So it's really quick for them to reach that flight mode. So without making it too complicated and going into sensory processing and that kind of stuff, it just means that their window of tolerance is a lot smaller. So you're not dealing with, days and days of build up. Really, you're dealing with an hour straight away reactivity or something. And so again, it's the same pattern. You just got to hold that space. They're not feeling safe. They're feeling overwhelmed. What can I do as the adult in the room to make them feel safe right now? Make that physical connection, because any type of physical connection creates that dopamine, which allows things to connect, which allows that breath out. And that's going to help as well. So much else we can do for sensory processing. I could talk for hours and hours on this topic. Okay, yeah. So, yeah. Look, that's interesting that, so someone's saying as well that sensory processing disorders are no longer recognised by paediatricians. I'm not so sure on that. I think you can get psychologists who will do those tests for you. So just I'd get a second opinion if I were you. I'm not sure where that stands. That's new to me because I've had other kids come in who have been diagnosed. Yeah, so if we're looking at school and school refusal and I can't get to school, school refusal, again, really, really bad name, school can't. Exactly, they just actually can't get to school. If you're thinking about, okay, one thing I will say about school, and I was just talking to a friend about this afternoon, and I talk about this a lot, but there's no other environment that us as adults would put ourselves in that is similar to school environment. We would not put up with so many different people's behavior. We would not be put up with being put under that much stress and tension and pressure to perform, to learn. A nervous system who has so much information to process. So they're processing other people's emotional reactions who are unsteady. They're processing just the noise and the movements and the unpredictability of teachers changing, all that kind of stuff. No one's blaming the teachers here, but the school system as a whole triggers our nervous system. And we're expecting our kids to go into that environment every single day, 5 days a week, and form friendships and perform academically, which makes no sense because the moment that the limbic system triggers, the frontal lobe shuts off, and so it actually makes learning near impossible when that so if we don't feel safe, we don't learn. All right, but then the pressure is that if we aren't learning, then we're in trouble, or when we don't belong. And again, our sense of belonging is our sense of safety. So most of the kids are just trying to find out where they belong. So it's triggering for that nervous system. They're just trying to find that sense. And so they're walking into these environments where nothing feels safe. 5 days a week, we're meant to form an identity within those people there who are going through the same stuff that we're going through, just as unsettled. Everyone's reacting to each other. But you do that for years and years and years and years and years. and you're a child. I don't know what we're trying to expect from our kids at the moment. So I will do a whole other thing on the school can't or school refusal, but that's a sign that the nervous system is completely burnt out. And if you think about going into a space of work or a space with people with that much pressure and that much tension in it and that much unsafety as an adult, and your nervous system says, I can't do this anymore, at least you can escape. Kids were telling them that they're not allowed to escape. And so it's so hard. No wonder it's causing so many mental health problems. But, so we look at it from a behavior point of view, whereas really it's a meltdown, it's a burnout because they've tried and tried and tried and tried and they no longer can anymore. So that's my issues with school. And you got to remember as well, so if they're having behavior issues after school, then they're trying to process the emotional tension and the pressure that was happening at school. They probably felt ashamed at some point, they probably felt overwhelmed at some point or scared at some point, and they haven't had time to process things, even though they've had a fun day and a good day. They're not really getting that time to process how they're feeling. So they get in the car, and if you can have silence or calming or not talking or not pressure at that point of getting them in the car or getting them home from school, you got to let them have that little downtime. One thing you can do as well is have some natural chewing gum or something sensory in the back, because that will increase the dopamine levels. You want something to eat, so you get the blood sugar nice and high again, like not extra high, so then you go into a dip and a drop again, which only gets that cortisol going again. But if you're able to, allow that sense of, okay, calm and presence, I've got you, you're safe, no worries, we're in control. But if the child gets in this and you're tense and you're overwhelmed and you're rushing around, then the child is being on like that all day, they're going to fight you at that moment. They're going to melt down. They're going to have a really hard time. And so, if you're getting that behavior after school, you need to be able to just allow that processing time after school so that they can try and comprehend what exactly went on. Again, you've come home from a night out, and then the next day you wake up and you start thinking about all the interactions that you've had. It's kids are the same. It's like, they're trying to figure out, what did they mean by that? What happened there? How did I respond there? Was that safe? Was that unsafe? Were they mean? Were they not being mean? What happened there? Or God, I was so embarrassed by that. So that's happening every day for our kids. Same with preschool as well. So that's why you get that emotional meltdown after preschool. And again, they just need a lot of physical cuddles, wrestles, some food. Probably you to just shift the energy rather than feed too much in the emotion of it first. You just need to shift that energy first. Now, if you've got a child who's not going to sleep at night, and that's your behavior issues, if everything's coming out at night, then you haven't had enough connection time with that child throughout the day, or they haven't been able to connect to you because you've been too tense. So even though you've tried, it's come from that real tense place. So they're not feeling safe and relaxed throughout the day. Their cortisol levels have risen all day, and then you're trying to get them to relax at night, but you're meeting them with more tension. The whole shit show. So, with sleep, it's really important to try and do that real, I'm talking like hours before bed, that real connection time here. But again, not really feeding into that. Just let them be on their own, let them process things, or just be around you. Janae, you raised your hand. Do you want to ask something? or you can write it in the chat box. Yeah, all good. So so sleep, if all these emotions and things are happening at sleep, it's probably not the real emotion. It's not really what's underlying it. So what they're coming out with is not really what's underlying it. It's just a way to make you connect with them. But if you come in with that connection before the emotion, if you make it a routine to connect no matter what, then they're going to start feeling safe in that routine of, okay, that connection is there. I don't need to emotionally pull them in here to make them present with me. But hey, Steph, sorry, we're just nearing the end, so just come out with any questions and stuff. What was I saying? Yeah, so if you're having that connection time, and this goes for bigger kids as well, and teenagers, if they're having those big emotional meltdowns at bedtime, then they're not getting that resolution throughout the day. More in that toddler sense, they need that connection and that downtime, and to know that you're okay and that you're safe. If it's a little bit older, then they could be getting a little bit overtired as well, and they could be, they might need their bedtime brought forward a fair bit because they're just getting to that point where the cortisol levels are now taking over, and that starts negative thinking. When cortisol gets involved, when stress hormones get involved, then we start negatively thinking as well. Again, I could go on forever and ever and ever at this. Yeah, so someone started playing Uno before bed. It's working really well. And again, that kind of connection is perfect before bed, which is, hard if you're rushing around. But again, if you're making eye contact, if you're inviting them into some conversations, or just walking past and giving them a squeeze every now and again, that's a really, really good thing. I'm going to wrap it up there, guys, because I feel like that's a whole lot of information. But look, I've got this course which I'll tell you about a bit later. But it's anxiety in kids, and it really goes into all of this in depth. And it's just this massive resource for you. So you can find that on my website. But I'll send you all an email with that after the replay and everything as well. But I want to thank you for joining me tonight. If you've got any more questions, please feel free to Instagram or Facebook me, and I'll try and approach it. I might even run another one of these depending on all of those questions. But if you want any clarity, let me know. If it's been a little bit too fast and you're not really sure, just let me know, and I'll adjust things and come back to you. But let's make it a relationship. Again, thank you for turning up, and thank you for joining me. And look, as much love as possible. If you're feeling like you're stressed and tense and you're expecting your child's behavior to change so that you're not, it's probably the wrong way to look at it. And emotions run high, and what I'm trying to say is that emotions run through on a subconscious level, and so they're going to be feeling what you're feeling as well most of the time. It's not as a guilt thing, it's just what humans do in order to make themselves feel safe. So you don't have to be happy and perfect all the time, but you need to be aware of your reactions based off those emotions. So thank you so much, and I will speak to you guys another time. Thank you. Bye.